The Galactic Council chamber glittered with gold-veined stone, suspended above the gas giant Elora. Delegates from 100 worlds hovered in their grav seats, bioluminescent robes and crystalline crests shimmering in the pale light. At the center, a single human stood, rigid, proud, and utterly alone. Captain Arya Voss adjusted her dark blue uniform, the patch of the United Nations Space Navy catching the overhead glow. She wasn't a diplomat. She was a soldier sent to deliver a warning. "Our colonies are under threat," she said, voice carrying across the amphitheater. "The Dominion has expanded into our frontier. We request recognition of our defense measures and council oversight of the treaties they've already broken." Snickers rippled through the chamber. The Zalori delegate clicked its mandibles in amusement. The Tralaxian floated higher in its grav seat, translucent wings vibrating in mock applause. But it was the Ashari who spoke. High Strategos Velker leaned forward, his crimson ceremonial armor gleaming. His voice slithered like oil. "Defense measures? You mean your toys? These railguns you worship? Do you expect the galaxy to take you seriously when you fire lumps of metal at starships? Energy shields render them useless." The chamber laughed louder now, a chorus of alien derision. Arya stood still, her jaw tight. She had been warned this would happen. Humanity was young, unproven, and mocked. But she hadn't come for their approval. She looked Velker in his predatory eyes and answered coolly. "Then you have nothing to fear, Strategos. Leave our colonies be." The silence that followed was sharper than the laughter. Velker smiled, a slow, cruel smile that revealed serrated teeth. "Perhaps we will. Perhaps not. It would amuse me to see your little slugs ricochet off real warships." The council adjourned soon after, the matter unresolved. Humanity was dismissed. Again. Hours later, the UNS Dauntless drifted in low orbit above Arkan 7, a frontier colony wrapped in steel domes and oxygen-fed forests. From the command deck, Captain Voss watched as the planet rotated beneath them, a fragile jewel in the dark. "Report," she ordered. Her XO, Commander Hale, checked the holo display. "Colonial scanners show multiple contacts. Dominion fleet signatures. 30 minutes out." The bridge crew stiffened. The moment they all knew was coming had arrived. 30 minutes, Arya repeated softly. She straightened, feeling every pair of eyes turned to her. "Then this is where we prove them wrong," a junior officer, barely out of training, whispered. "But Captain, what if the railguns don't work?" Arya's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "Then humanity goes down firing." The Dominion fleet emerged from FTL in a bloom of violet light. 10 sleek warcruisers, their hulls layered in glowing shield lattices, advanced like hunting beasts. Velker's command ship, the Blood Fawn, took point. On the Dauntless, targeting arrays hummed to life. Massive electromagnetic coils began to charge, a low vibration thrumming through the ship's frame. "Rail batteries locked," Hale reported. "All ships in formation," Arya ordered. "Do not fire until my mark." The Dominion opened comms. Velker's image filled the bridge, towering and smug. "Run, little human," he said. "I'll even give you a head start. Show me how fast your slugs can crawl." Arya met his gaze without flinching. "Fire!" The Dauntless shuddered as tungsten slugs, each the size of a truck, ripped down the rails at hypersonic speed. In the silence of vacuum, no sound traveled, but the shockwaves echoed through every sensor screen. The first volley slammed into the Dominion vanguard. Shields flared, then collapsed like glass under a hammer. A warcruiser split open, venting atmosphere and bodies into the void. The second ship lost power, tumbling helplessly. The bridge crew stared in disbelief. Commander Hale whispered, It worked." Arya didn't smile. Her voice was steady, ironclad. "Of course it worked. Reload and fire again." Velker's face returned to the comms, but the arrogance was gone. His eyes burned with fury. "You dare!" he began. Arya cut the transmission. "We dare," she said, almost to herself. Outside, the Dominion fleet regrouped, but the galaxy's laughter had already died. The Dominion fleet reformed into a hunting crescent, their crimson hulls glowing against the stars. The loss of 2 cruisers had rattled them, but arrogance still lingered like smoke. They believed it was luck, a glitch in their shields. On the UNS Dauntless, the bridge vibrated as coils charged for another salvo. The human crew worked in silence, every face lit by blue holoscreens. "Targets reacquired," Commander Hale confirmed. "Range closing. They're charging plasma batteries." Captain Arya Voss kept her eyes on the tactical display. 10 ships still against 1 cruiser and a small escort fleet. She knew the math. Humanity shouldn't win. But this wasn't about math anymore, it was about proving the galaxy wrong. "Rail batteries 2 and 3, fire at will," she commanded. The Dauntless thundered again. Tungsten slugs ripped across space, impacting the forward Dominion ship. Its shield flared, buckled, and shattered. The slug continued straight through, carving a molten scar across its hull. Seconds later, the ship exploded in a silent blossom of fire. The bridge erupted in cheers. Even hardened officers couldn't contain it. 3 ships down, Hale said, his voice almost reverent. Arya raised a hand for silence. "Don't celebrate yet. They're adapting." As if to prove her right, the remaining Dominion ships shifted formation, layering their shields to absorb kinetic impacts. Plasma bolts lit the void, streaking toward the Dauntless. "Brace!" The ship rocked as superheated energy slammed into the hull. The Dauntless groaned, shields straining but holding. Sparks rained down from a blown console. "Shields at 60%, an officer reported. Arya's jaw tightened. They couldn't trade blows forever. They had to keep striking, fast and precise. "Target their engines," she ordered. "We don't just kill ships, we cripple them." The next volley tore into a Dominion cruiser's thrusters, sending it spinning out of formation. Another slug smashed into a bridge dome, venting alien crew into space. For the first time, fear flickered across Velker's command bridge. His officers looked uneasy. This was no fluke. The humans had a weapon the galaxy had dismissed for centuries, and it was tearing them apart. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, reports streamed in. Hollow feeds showed Dominion warships exploding under railgun fire. The laughter of yesterday was gone. Delegates watched in silence, some with horror, others with grudging awe. The Zalori delegate whispered, "Primitive, and yet..." The Trilaxian folded its wings, voice sharp. "If humans wield such power unchecked, the balance of the galaxy will collapse." Velker's own representative spat venom. "Our strategos will crush them." He must. But no one was laughing anymore. Back on the Dauntless, the battle reached its peak. Plasma fire raked across the hull, and alarms screamed through the ship. Hull plating warped, and 1 rail battery went offline. "Captain?" Hale shouted over the noise. "If we don't retreat..." Arya cut him off. "If we retreat, they'll hound us to Earth itself. We stand here." Another blast rocked the cruiser. Flames licked across the engineering deck. Then Arya gave the order that would be remembered in history. "Divert auxiliary power to coils 4 and 5. Overcharge them." Her crew hesitated. Overcharging meant risking meltdown. But no one disobeyed. The coils screamed as energy surged. The ship rattled like a dying beast. Then the slugs launched, 2 glowing spears ripping through the void. The Dominion flagship took the hit broadside. 1 slug shattered its shields, the other bored through its reactor core. A moment later, the blood fawn erupted in a colossal explosion that lit the battlefield brighter than a sun. The Dominion fleet faltered. Leaderless. Shaken. Afraid. On the Dauntless bridge, silence fell. Every eye turned to Arya. She stood tall, steady, the faint firelight of the dying flagship reflected in her gaze. "They thought us weak," she said quietly. "Now they know better." Commander Hale exhaled. "Captain, the galaxy just changed." Hours later, after the Dominion survivors limped away into FTL retreat, Arya recorded her after-action log. First engagement of the UNS Dauntless. Confirmed destruction of 4 Dominion cruisers and the flagship. Casualties, heavy damage sustained, but ship operational. Morale, unshaken. Humanity has proven its weapons effective. The galaxy will remember Arrogance 7. She paused, staring at the blinking cursor. Then added, and they will remember that we warned them. She closed the log. Outside, the wreckage of alien warships drifted in silence, glowing embers against the black. The war had just begun. Word of the battle at Arrogance 7 spread faster than light itself. By the time the wreckage of the Dominion fleet had cooled, data streams raced through trade relays, couriers whispered in shadowed ports, and every Council intelligence hub scrambled to verify the impossible. Humans had shattered a Dominion armada with obsolete mass drivers. For centuries, railguns were considered relics, crude, inefficient compared to plasma, disruptors, or beam arrays. But the footage told another story. Tungsten slugs punching through shields like paper. War cruisers cut in half with a single strike. The Dominion flagship, destroyed. Council chamber, Elora Prime. The chamber that once rang with laughter now sat in tense silence. Delegates crowded their grav seats, each projecting their own feeds of the battle. Anger, fear, and disbelief swirled like a storm. This is a trick, snapped the RYYTH delegate, its serpentine body coiled tight. No primitive metal can pierce layered shielding. The Trilaxian winged upward, voice cutting. And yet we have evidence. They did it. Humans wield a weapon the rest of us discarded centuries ago. Velker's adjutant, speaking for the absent strategos, hissed. The Dominion will correct this embarrassment. Reinforcements are already en route. Humanity's insolence will be crushed. But not all were convinced. The Zalore clicked its mandibles. You said the same before Arrogance 7. How many fleets will you burn before you admit they are not what you believed? Murmurs spread through the chamber. For the first time, the galaxy's elite saw humanity not as a child species, but as a destabilizing force. If slugs could kill shields, no fleet was safe. Aboard the Dauntless, Captain Arya Voss stood in the briefing room with her senior officers. The holodeck projected Dominion fleet movements. Red markers swarmed across the frontier. They're doubling down, Commander Hale muttered. They'll throw everything at us to prove Arrogance 7 was an accident. Arya nodded grimly. Velker's pride won't allow retreat. That makes him dangerous. A young ensign, pale but determined, spoke up. Captain, what if the Council intervenes? We're not just fighting the Dominion. If the rest of them turn, then we fight them too, Arya said, steady as steel. Her crew stiffened, but she left no room for doubt. They think us primitive. They think us weak. Every volley we fire proves otherwise. Dominion Command, aboard the Iron Talon. High Strategos Velker's claws dug into the command throne. The humiliation of Arrogance 7 burned in his veins like poison. His officers spoke carefully now, afraid of stoking his wrath. Strategos, analysis suggests human projectiles move faster than our shield harmonics can adjust. If they... Silence! Velker snarled. You think I fear primitives? I will crush their worlds until none remain to laugh. He rose, towering over the war room. Prepare the grand offensive. Not a raid. Not a skirmish. I will burn their colonies to ash, one by one, until Earth itself kneels. His officers bowed low. None dared remind him that arrogance had already cost them dearly. Human frontier, Arrogance 7 recovery. The colony of Arrogance 7 bore scars of the first battle, shattered satellites, burned habitats, wreckage still raining from orbit. Yet amidst the ruin, a new spirit emerged. Civilians gathered at the dome's edges, watching as repair crews worked alongside naval engineers. Children pointed at the Dauntless as if it were a myth given steel. For the first time, frontier colonists believed the Navy could protect them. Arya walked among them briefly, her presence sparking whispers and salutes. She wasn't a politician. But she understood what she saw. Humanity had tasted respect, and they would never give it up. Council debate, growing unease. A week later, the council reconvened. No laughter now. Only unease. If the humans replicate this technology on a larger scale, warned the Tari delegate, our fleets will be vulnerable. The balance of power will fracture. The Trilaxian leaned forward, translucent wings quivering. Then the answer is obvious. Containment. Before they mass-produce these weapons. But others hesitated. The Zalori delegate rasped. Containment risks driving them into alliance with enemies of the Council. Or worse, into outright conquest. Whispers spread like fire. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy faced a power it could neither dismiss nor fully control. Back on the Dauntless. New orders, Captain, Hale said, placing a datapad on the table. Command wants us on the frontier line. Multiple colonies reported incoming Dominion fleets. They're sending us to hold the line. Arya scanned the orders. Her stomach tightened, but her voice stayed firm. Then we hold. However long it takes. She looked at her crew, each one watching her with trust. They underestimated us once. They won't make that mistake again. But they'll come harder, fiercer, desperate to prove us weak. So we'll prove them wrong. Every single time. The crew answered with a single voice. Aye, Captain. Closing scene, Velker's shadow. In the darkness of his war room, Velker stared at a projection of Earth. His claws traced the glowing outline of humanity's homeworld. Railguns? He spat, voice dripping with venom. Let them cling to their toys. I will tear their world apart. And when Earth burns, no one will remember Arkan 7. But deep down, buried under layers of pride, a whisper of doubt had already taken root. The Dominion's response was not a raid, it was a reckoning. From every gateway and dark jump lane, the Iron Talons summoned reinforcements. Fleets that had been stationed at distant borders pivoted like predators answering a horn, cruisers, frigates, missile clouds, and armor barges carrying siege coils. Velker had declared a purge, and the frontier would be the proving ground. Dawn over the frontier. Arkan 7's sky was a bruise at midnight. Warships arranged themselves across the system like teeth. Messages scrolled across the dauntless comms. Other colonies reported identical phalanxes forming at their suns. The front line was no longer a thin line but a ragged, stitched net of desperate worlds. On the bridge, screens bloomed with coordinates. Captain Arya Voss stood before them, the weight of a dozen settlements on her shoulders. Situation, she said. Dominion forces massing at 6 systems along the frontier. Commander Hale replied. Estimated fleet strength, 3 to 5 times ours per engagement site. They aim to overwhelm us piecemeal. Arya's gaze went to the hollow of the planetary map. We can't be everywhere. No, ma'am, Hale said. But we can make the places they do attack costly. Arya's mind mapped tactics fast, hit and run, choke points, ambushes using gravity wells and debris fields. Railguns were spectacular at range, but they needed line of fire and timing. She would give them that, and a lesson in asymmetric fighting. Prepare task groups, she ordered. 1 to hold Arkan 7. 2 to harry their supply lines. 1 to lay mines in the Narvik corridor. Use the colonies as bait where we must, draw them into kill zones. And ensure civilians are evacuated from high-risk sectors. The first siege. The Dominion struck hard at the nearest system 2 days later. A wall of cruisers bore down, shield lattices shimmering like braided light. On approach, they detonated a coordinated ion volley intended to blind the human targeting nets. It almost worked. For 70 glorious seconds, the dauntless sensors hiccuped. Then the auxiliary arrays kicked in, simple, redundant systems designed by engineers who distrusted every theoretical advantage. Humans had not anticipated galactic elegance, they anticipated failure. The rail batteries found targets. A prelayed crossfire from 2 orbital platforms intersected with the dauntless arc. The first slug punched a hole through a cruiser's forward armor. The second clipped a magazine, turning the alien vessel into a drifting tomb. But the Dominion adapted, deploying swarms of contact drones, small, hard, and cheap. They chewed at the dauntless hull and forced the crew into hand-to-hand maintenance under fire. The human ships bled but did not break. On planet surfaces, civilians learned to duck into reinforced shelters as orbital fragments streaked down. Repair crews improvised makeshift turrets, rail coils repurposed from mining equipment, firing improvised slugs with brutal precision. Frontier ingenuity matched Navy discipline, and the result was ugly and effective. Guerrilla tactics in vacuum. Velker's forces expected pitched battles and orderly victories. Instead, they found ambushes in the dead spaces, asteroid fields rigged with slaving nets, hollowed cargo hulks turned into railgun batteries, commuter transports loaded with explosives and magnetic accelerators. Captain Arya orchestrated the first major ambush in the Narvik corridor, where a dense field of ice and debris nicked the edge of Dominion navigation lanes. Using short bursts of micro-jump stealth and false transponder signatures, human squads lured a cruiser into the trap. As it pushed through, rails along the field came to life, spitting slugs that shattered its engines. Guided fragments took down 2 more ships before the line collapsed into chaos. Velker's war doctrine relied on overwhelming power and rigid formations. Humans countered it with flexibility: scatter, strike, disappear. Each small victory cost Velker prestige and made his officers whisper of mutiny and miscalculation. Pressure at the Council. In the orbital halls of Elora, debate turned to panic. Some councilors argued for an outright ban on human rail technologies. Others whispered of alliances, blockades, or even preemptive strikes against human shipyards. The Trilaxian proposed sanctions. The Zalori urged caution. But the Tari delegate, eyes like polished coal, leaned forward. We must not allow one species to dictate arms policy by force of victory. If we do, we will encourage every fringe world to arm itself to the teeth. The debate produced nothing but delays. While planets argued, frontier worlds burned and rebuilt. The cost of victory. Human losses mounted. Arya received reports of whole frigates disintegrated, of boarding parties repelled at the cost of dozens of lives, of colonies shaved thin by bombardment. Each data packet arrived with a name, a face, a life erased. She read them alone in the smoking quiet of her cabin. The victories tasted of iron. She had not sought fame, only survival, and every triumphant tally carried a ledger of grief. Yet the frontier hardened. Young recruits became veterans overnight. Civilians learned to reinforce and fight beside soldiers. Railguns, once mocked as primitive, became the spine of a defense ethic that valued redundancy, brutal simplicity, and the willingness to sacrifice for home. Velker's escalation. Anger warped Velker into something sharper. He called forth a massive dreadnought, an older design retrofitted with layered plasma spines and an experimental grav disruptor meant to collapse target vectors. He intended it as a hammer to crush human improvisation. Arya heard of the dreadnought through intercepted comm chatter. Her jaw set. She could not face the blunt force of a dreadnought in open space and expect to win. But she could make its debut costly. Lure it to the Narvik corridor, she ordered. Align the field. Use every platform. If we cannot destroy it, we will wound it so deeply it cannot preside over another assault. Her crew moved like clockwork. Mines were laid, ambush points seated, and every rail battery in the sector prepared to overcharge if necessary. The night before confrontation, Arya walked the dauntless lower decks. She passed tired engineers sparking in dim lights and medics who joked through exhaustion to steady the young. On the mess hall wall, someone had tacked a hand-drawn poster, a crude sketch of a rail slug with the words, "Don't laugh." She stopped and traced the letters with a fingertip. Her resolve was not the same as the council's laughter or Velker's fury. It was granite, ground down and set by losses and victories alike. In the quiet, she whispered to herself what she would tell her crew in the morning. We hold. We hit. We survive. Not because we are the best, but because we are willing. The Narvik corridor waited like a closed fist. Stars beyond watched impassive as both sides prepared to strike. The siege had become a war of attrition and cunning, one that would test whether the human way of doing things could scale beyond frontier grit into true survival. And somewhere on the other side of the void, Velker's dreadnought angled its nose, shield lattices humming, hungry to restore a shattered name. The council chamber echoed with laughter. Rows of alien delegates leaned back in their seats, some chittering, some hissing, others producing guttural reverberations that passed for humor in their species. At the center dais, projected holographs displayed grainy footage, a human ship test firing a massive weapon. The blast ripped an asteroid apart with a single shot. To the gathered powers of the galaxy, it looked absurd. Crude. Inefficient. "Is that a slug-thrower?" scoffed Admiral Terex of the Keth Dominion, his four mandibles clicking in mirth. "Did the primitives truly bolt a cannon onto their ship?" "Primitive kinetic launchers," muttered Valen of the Dominion Council. "Imagine the recoil. Imagine the wasted energy. Even if it fires, it's laughable." The laughter swelled, wave after wave of derision rolling through the chamber. Only one figure did not laugh. Ambassador Elena Varga of Earth sat motionless, her expression unreadable, her hands folded neatly before her. She waited until the noise ebbed, and when the chamber grew quiet enough, she rose. Her voice was calm, steady, each word deliberate. "You think it is funny?" A ripple of amusement flickered again across the delegates. "Yes," said Terex, sneering. "We think it is hilarious." Varga's dark eyes sharpened. "So did others in our history. For centuries, humans fought with railguns, mass drivers, and slug launchers. They said we were wasting resources when directed energy was easier. They said kinetics were a relic of the past." She paused, letting her voice harden like steel. "Every one of those civilizations that mocked us is now gone." The chamber stirred. Some hissed in irritation. Others bristled at the perceived arrogance. Varga sat down again without another word. A week later, in the void beyond Cygni 3, Commander Daniel Rourke stood on the bridge of the UNS Leviathan, Earth's first heavy warship equipped with the railgun array. The ship was massive, bristling with 8 spinal-mounted rails that stretched the length of the vessel. Each was capable of accelerating a tungsten slug to a fraction of light speed. The crew watched as calibration routines finished their cycle. "Rail system aligned," reported Chief Engineer Saito. "Coils cooled. Capacitors charged." Rourke nodded. "Target? Simulation asteroid field, 600 kilometers out. Fire!" The bridge thrummed as energy shunted into the rails. Then came the sound, a deep, vibrating crack like the world itself splitting. A tungsten rod the size of a bus left the barrel at 30,000 meters per second. In seconds, a 50-kilometer asteroid shattered into glowing fragments. The crew stared in silence. Then the comms lit up. "Sir," said Saito softly, "that wasn't just a test shot. That was a message." Rourke didn't answer. His jaw tightened as he watched debris scatter across the void. Because messages were only useful if someone was listening. And the galaxy had laughed too long. Far away, in the Dominion's War Council chambers, Admiral Terex's amusement faded as reports streamed in. Colonies destroyed. Patrol ships obliterated in single salvos. No energy signatures. No beams to deflect. Just impacts, unstoppable, undetectable until too late. The aliens called it crude. Humans called it physics. And war had just begun.